Standing by is somebody that knows all about this. We have Paul Seegert on a lot because Paul works for a company that helps industry deal with the rising cost of health care. And the rising cost of health care also took a blow this week, particularly if you're somebody who is having their COVID treatments picked up by independent insurance companies. It's been a very busy week, but here he is now to weigh in on this and much more. Here is Paul Seegert. Paul, how are you on this glorious Saturday?
I'm doing fantastic. How are you today, Ken?
I'm doing well, but, normally confused when I just read about all this transpired this week. Let's talk first about Pfizer's vaccine finally being approved by the FDA. Now the ground that employers were standing on when they said to their employees, you need to be vaccinated if you want to continue to work here, just got a little bit firmer for them. But there's also a double-edged sword here because since it's been approved by the FDA and someone who has an adverse reaction to this particular vaccine, they're now free to sue Pfizer. So there's a little bit of good and bad in there for Pfizer, is there not?
There is, and I think they'll get favored in the mandates that we see coming out or surcharges. Either way, the trend is they're going to take a stronger stand on encouraging people to get vaccinated. Encouraging is probably the nicest way to say it, I guess. Some of these are pretty coercive and largely ignore the fact that herd immunity or natural immunity exists, like you just talked about in that Israeli study. So that to me is a big glaring hole in the whole conversation and the $200 surcharge.
Yeah, let's before we get into Delta, let's just talk about this study. Now, this is the operative phrase. It is a preprint study, which means that other people in the science world haven't had a chance to look at it, and look at it often means debunk in the world of science, but it would seem to me it was a rather large group that was studied. 76,000 people is a rather robust number, and the results were that these researchers discovered that immunity acquired through infection from COVID-19 is superior to immunity from the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. They also found that fully vaccinated but uninfected people were significantly more likely to have this breakthrough from the Delta variant. Well, why is it that these countries, other than the United States, are doing this kind of research? What happened to the United States with research on this particular avenue of COVID-19?
Well, it's a really great question. It seems to be absent from the bigger conversation that we see in the media, but our scientific community is in agreement, really, with the study you just cited from Israel. Emory University put out a great study, say 2 weeks ago, or maybe 4 weeks ago now.
Been about a month.
But they confirmed the same thing. That natural immunity is strong, is very durable for many, and longer lasting. It doesn't require a booster shot. And it also is broader, and that means when these various variants come about, because in all reality we now have an endemic, more so than a pandemic, and so as these things come about, those who have had COVID and recovered are, the science is showing they have a greater resistance.
Yeah,
greater protection.
I'm a layman. I don't pretend to be a scientist, but if you look at the amount of people in this country that have been vaccinated in one way, shape, or form, it's roughly 60%. If you look at the people that have been infected with COVID, it's a rather significant number as well. In fact, there have been people that have been infected with COVID that don't even know it because they were asymptomatic. So it would seem to me if we're having this wild breakout because of the Delta variant, and people who have been vaccinated are now being infected with this Delta variant, it would seem to me that whatever vaccines we got that helped us for the first 3 months, for a lot of people, they're not helping them very much right now. So why would we need a booster shot at this point?
Well, the other side of the argument is that while you're more likely perhaps to catch the variant if you've been vaccinated versus having obtained natural immunity, the vaccine still provides strong protection against hospitalization and death. So you can get it, you can pass it along, but you do still have some strong protection from being hospitalized or having a very serious case of COVID, although it kind of, to me, it makes me think and go back to the Great Barrington Accord, where so many public health experts, some of the very best in the world from Stanford, Harvard, Oxford, and literally 85,000 others from around the world that are smarter than both of us in this area, they said early on, and continue to stand by what they said, that the best course of action would be to protect the very vulnerable with vaccines and other measures, and allow the rest of the population of the world to live normally, and we would get the herd immunity through those who are not high risk getting natural immunity.
It raises something I heard the other day, and I had to laugh at it. It said that what we have in the name of science really isn't science. What we have are experts, and there's a vast difference between science and experts. Experts always have an opinion. Mm-hmm. Science is not necessarily that of the opinion of the expert. And I think that's part of the problem here, is that we've got these experts that are running around, from Lord Fauci to everybody else, but where's the science? And this to me looks like, again, it's preprint, which could be not enough people have gotten their hands on it to debunk it. But, I mean, look, if you look at this, I don't see anybody in this country now saying, you know what we need as well as vaccines? We need an antibody test, and here's how we're going to fund it. By gosh, Pfizer made $35 billion, and that's on that vaccine.
Right.
Don't you think they got a couple of billion laying around they can do an antibody test? Nobody seems to want to talk about that, Paul.
Nobody wants to talk about it, and yet there are some, I think, very important lawsuits going on right now between employees and their employer who have gotten antibody tests and or T-cell tests. We may have spoken about one before between a law professor and George Mason University, where he's over a year past having got COVID and recovered. Mm-hmm. And he's been tested every few months and can continue to show that he has very strong immunity, as strong or stronger than having got vaccinated. And yet the school is saying he has to get vaccinated in order to teach live classes, or he has to submit to 3 times a week testing and PPE and social distancing and really inconvenient stuff. Yeah. There are actually some bright spots in the conversation. There are finally some employers, and I think it's not necessarily from a scientific standpoint that they're doing this, but because they fear they won't be able to staff their facilities. But there's actually some medical facilities that are now allowing, and I think even in your own state there, where they're allowing the nurses and others that work there to show natural immunity through the test or proof of vaccination. And I think that's a very positive move forward, and it's shocking, really, that it's taken this long to just start to see it show up in the conversation.
Yeah. Kettering Medical Complex is what you're referring to. Well, here, Paul, here are 2 things that probably go hand in hand. So this story broke, I want to say, on Thursday night, maybe Friday, that insurance providers will no longer waive all costs associated with COVID-19 treatments. And quite a few, as you well know, have waived those costs up till now. But this analysis by the Kaiser Family Foundation, 72% of U.S. insurers who previously waived the cost sharing or entirely covered treatment for COVID have quit doing so, and another 10% are going to phase it out by the end of October. Well, lo and behold, on the same day, here comes Delta Airlines, and now they're going to start charging workers $200 a month in penalties if they don't get vaccinated for the COVID-19. So here we are now. We've gone from urging a vaccine to bribing for a vaccine to threatening if you don't get a vaccine. And $200 a month is a pretty steep fee to pay if you're a baggage handler or flight attendant or a ticket taker at Delta Airlines. And my guess is because of the Pfizer vaccine being approved this week, that Delta, now really has some teeth if it wants to go forward with this. Do they?
They do, and they have the complete legal path forward to do it. I think it's unfortunate that it ignores the thing we were just talking about, natural immunity. There should be some allowance for that, and I think they are open to some litigation around that. Likely there'll be some lawsuits related to that, and perhaps that'll help evolve that surcharge that they're doing.
Yeah. I find it interesting because at the end of the day, the answers to all of your questions in life involve money, and that's what's going on here. The insurance companies are pulling back, and so businesses are feeling more stressed, and so now I think what you're going to find is you're going to find that a lot of businesses are just going to say they're just going to, well, you can't work here anymore. Well, I'll sue you.
Right.
Well, here's a company handbook that says that you can't sue me because it's right here that I have the right to impose whatever I want to impose because this is a private business. I mean, so
yeah, and they do. Yeah.
This is where we've arrived to with COVID-19. It's not necessarily what's best for your health or not. It's what's best for the financial health of the company. In fairness to the company, they are paying exorbitant fees. You know, as tough as it is on a monthly basis for me or you or anybody else to make a co-payment, these companies are paying infinitely more. Now, maybe some of them, like Pfizer, can afford it. You know, a couple of billion here for antibody research, like we talked about. Well, a company like Delta can probably afford it, but they're tired of paying that premium. I don't know where the end is because I still think, and you and I have talked about this, Paul, that anybody who's been vaccinated right now, that's it. I think they've hit a brick wall, and we have 10 million people that don't want to work right now or out of work, and there are 10 million people, 10 million jobs that aren't filled. So I think we've reached a point in this country where I don't want to work. If you're going to make me get vaccinated, I'm not going to work for you. And I don't know where we go from there to getting, you know, to a point where everybody can reclaim the life they had in December of 2019. I think we've hit a brick wall.
We have, unless the broader conversation starts to include the whole scientific conversation and natural immunity that we've talked about, which the rest of the world seems to do a much better job at, as you pointed out. I mean, it's amazing that we don't hear it, and it's really encouraging that we're starting to. And it's not surprising to me that it's employers who are bringing it into the conversation. They're always have to be more practical in these matters. Like you said, they're paying for the health care, and the system did pay, our healthcare system, $2.3 billion in hospitalization costs in June and July for unvaccinated people. Yeah. It's a serious expense to the system. Yeah. But there's so much more to the conversation, too, and not everyone's at the same level of risk. You have a $200 surcharge that's broadly applied for not having a vaccine. But when you look at the people that actually get hospitalized for COVID, vaccinated or not, there's a profile of risk. You know, they tend to be obese or have other underlying health conditions, and it's not politically correct to talk about that.
No, don't. Whatever you do, don't tell somebody they're too fat and that's why they got sick. Don't ever do that, Paul. Right. You know, but I mean, you're right.
You would never see a surcharge for that, but that actually is those chronic illnesses that are lifestyle-based are really driving. They drove healthcare costs before COVID, and they're driving healthcare costs in COVID.
Yeah. Well, that's a broader conversation, but I want to save that for down the road because I love having you on my show, Paul. Managing partner, PCS Advisers, a healthcare benefit consulting firm based in California to try and make healthcare more affordable for everybody. Paul, stay well. We'll visit down the road. Thank you.
Thanks for having me. Have a great day.
Yep. Guy knows it inside out. Really knows it inside out.